Hi everyone, this is Neill. So the time has come now for everyone to think about the ethical implications of your action research project. Obviously, if you're going to go and be changing things in your classroom or in other roles that have been working with other people as part of your project, what you do might very well have significant impact on other people. Therefore, there are going to be ethical issues that you're going to have to think about. Um, I love that. Marlboro Kids now with 100% more nicotine. Clearly not very ethical. There are three areas we need to think about when we think about the ethics of doing a research project. That's respect for individuals, beneficence, which just means trying to do good, trying to improve things rather than make them worse, and justice. And so there are a few things we need to think about in each area. Now, the first one, respect for individuals, this is about the ways in which students are going to be participants in your research project. If you're asking students to give you feedback on what they think about the changes you've made or whether they're really working for you, if you want to ask students to give you information in, say, questionnaires or in little focus groups, if you want to video lessons and there are students in it, and then you might want to describe in your assignment what was going on in the video, in all these different ways, students have become research subjects. They've become part of your research. For them to do that, they have to give you informed consent that they are happy and willing that any data that's been generated through them or by them, either directly or indirectly, so data directly generated by them would be they've given you feedback on a questionnaire. Indirectly would be, well, they're there in a video that you were, that they're using as part of your research project. They have to agree to that. They have to be respected at all stages in the data generation process, and they should take part in the data generation on a completely voluntary basis, which means that actually it's completely fine at any time if they turn around and say, do you know what, I've changed my mind, I don't want to be part of this project anymore. In order for them to give you informed consent, you have to explain to your participants in language that they can understand what the project is, what you're trying to achieve, how they fit into this project, why you want to get data from them, what you're going to do with that data, what purpose their data is going to be used for, where it's going to be used as part of your project, how you're going to store that data. There are data protection issues here. You have to store the data in such a way that nobody else can get access to it. So the gold standard is that any data that you generate as part of your action research project, just keep it on an external hard drive or thumb drive that is password protected. Don't leave it on your laptop, and do not put it on any of BIM's servers or networks. At the end of the project, once you've written up your assignment and you know it's passed, then you should dispose of the data. You should destroy any data that's left over. Now, let's be clear. You don't need at any point to ask your students to give you permission for how you're going to teach them. As professional teachers, it's always entirely up to us to decide in the best way possible how we're going to teach our classes. This isn't about that part of it. You go into your class, you teach your class, that's up to you, that's fine. This is about using students to give you data that you're going to use as part of your action research project. You might, depending on what your project is, need to say to all the students in the group, right, I'm going to be videoing these lessons, is everyone cool with that? If anyone's not, then actually you do in fact have to, whenever you're videoing the lessons, make sure that you sit them out of the way of the camera. I mean, it's just a little easy thing to do, but something you need to remember. More likely and actually, it's very, very, very unusual. In fact, I've never known a student say no, because our students tend to be really supportive and are really interested in what we're doing. But, they do have the right to say no. And if you're asking students to take part in a focus group or fill out questionnaires, then they need to know that it's completely voluntary. They don't have to do it. Their treatment or the grade they get on the course isn't in any way going to be affected or prejudiced by whether they choose to take part in that or not. Okay, so it's all straightforward, but you just need to be a little bit careful about it. The other thing that we need to be very clear about is that because we're doing action research, we're never conducting any kind of hidden experiment. The students, in a way, you can think of them as co-researchers, because the more information they give you back, remembering that triangle of the I position and the you position, what you think and what people directly involved in the project think, we're never doing anything that is hidden, subversive, underhand. We're always being just totally upfront with our students about what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve and why, and making it clear that we really value what they have to say to us. So we're trying to improve our professional work. So we're working with people. We're not working, as it were, on them as if they were lab animals or test subjects. That's a different kind of research. It's not the kind of research that we're doing. And the other way in which we respect individuals is that when you write up your assignments at the end of the course, you never name anybody directly. You give them pseudonyms, you call them, Mary, Mungo and Midge, you call them X, Y and Z, whatever, but students need to remain anonymous in your write-up. Okay, so that's about respect for individuals. The second area is beneficence, which means doing good, bringing benefit. We have to think about the potential risks and the potential benefits to participants of whatever it is that we're about to do. We're making changes. The whole point about an action research project is the very title begins with the words, how do I improve, ... So we are trying to improve things, not make them worse. So therefore we do, before we start, need to think about the potential benefits and any potential risks for the things that we're trying to do, the experiments we're going to make in class and in the ways in which we teach. And we must always be very clear in our minds before we start that we think that what we're doing is going to be an improvement, that the benefits will outweigh the risks. Very, very occasionally, this does happen, but it's rare, and it's fine when it happens. You might change something in your teaching thinking it's going to make things better, it's going to be an improvement, and actually, and you do it with the best intentions and really good, best thinking in the world, for whatever reason, it doesn't work, and in fact, it makes things worse. There's a nice little safety valve here. If you think that what you're doing is making things worse, just stop, right? And go back to what you were doing before. Don't plough on, because then you know that you've dealt with the whole issue of beneficence. The final area we need to think about is justice, because we need to make sure that all of our students are exposed to the same amount of potential benefit or risk as each other. You can't expose some students potentially to more benefit or to more risk than others. And that particularly comes up in our context in occasions where you might have more than one group of students studying with you for the same module. If you do, whatever changes you make, you have to make the same changes with all groups. If you think about it, if you think, I've got a great way of making some improvements, and you've got two groups of students on the module, it might be tempting to think, well, I'll try them out with one group, not with the other group, and see what difference it makes. Well, we're not in this form of research working with control groups. The control group is the group where you wouldn't have made the changes, because potentially that's really unfair on the students who don't get the improvements. If they happened to draw the short straw and be in the group where you weren't making the improvements, that could have a massive impact on their grades compared to the students who happen to be lucky and be in the group where you did make the improvements. So whatever you do, you have to do it with all students on one course. You do not, however, because this is then fair within each group of students, you don't have to make the same changes on every single course you teach. In fact, I would recommend that you don't, because that's just going to blow your minds and have you trying to pay attention to too many different things. I always think with action research, it's really worth focusing your attention on just one or two different courses, because that makes it much more manageable for you. And don't forget, the research aspect of this is that we're not trying to uncover some grand universal truth. We're trying to develop knowledge about our own practice. So you will be able to see changes. You'll be able to see changes week by week as you're introducing new things. That's your evidence that it's working. It's seeing the change. It's not having a group where you do it and having a group where you don't do it. As I say, that's a different form of research. So there's a bunch of things to think about there, but they get focused then on the fact that right now, at this point of the course, you need to fill out the ethical approval form. Before you start your action research, before you start your first research cycle, you need to get this form signed off by me. So I'll just take you through it. It's on the blog. And there are 10 questions that you need to respond to. So each question, one or two have a not applicable option, but basically each question has either yes or no answer, and you just electronically ring or underline whichever answer applies. Now, if you choose the answer which is in small letters, you need do nothing any further. If you choose the answer which is in big, bold capitals, at the bottom of the form you'll see there's a section for any other information. That means you're going to have to write something in there, because that means that there's an ethical area that you need to show that you've considered. So you'll see what this means as we go through the form. So the first question, has the draft project proposal, including the ethical considerations, been completed and submitted to your tutor? Just say yes, because by the end of this term, you'd have done the action research plan, which we've been working on week by week on the blog, and you'd have done this form, so that's yes. So that's small letters, not bold, not an issue. The second one, however, everyone is also going to end up bringing the word yes. Will the project involve an intervention or a change to an existing situation that may affect people? Well, yeah, the whole point is you're doing a piece of research which is about changing a situation and trying to improve people's experience. So that's the yes, that's in capital and bold. That means you need to write something, and basically all you need to write in the little section at the end of the form is, yes, I'm aware that this is going to change people's situations, but I've designed it very carefully that it's going to be improving people's situations. So you show, you're not having to justify yourself here. All you're having to do is show that you've thought about the potential issues and that you're clear on them, and that's all we're looking for at this point. If yes, have participants been given information about the aims of your project? Well, again, you should circle yes there, and then if you're going to give your participants a little handout explaining what you're doing for your action research project and why you want to get data from them, which you should do, then you should just attach a little copy of that handout there as well. Great. Number 3, will any person's position in any way be prejudiced if they choose not to participate in the project? Remember, not participate in the project means not be involved in generating data, so they don't want to fill out a questionnaire or they don't want to be in a focus group. Different issue, remember, from whether they're in your class. Of course they're in your class, that's not the point. The answer to that really does need to be no, because you can't be prejudiced against anybody or treat them in a different way just because they don't want to fill out a questionnaire. That's entirely their right. In the same way, can they withdraw from the project at any stage without risk or prejudice? That's going to be a yes, because withdrawing just means they don't want to participate in the questionnaires or focus groups any longer. Now, I don't know for anyone here, will your project involve working with anyone under 16 years of age? Potentially the answer might be yes if you're working with any level 2 students in any of the colleges. If the answer is yes, then you need to just explain why that is. And 5A, the answer there, according to BIM policy, has to be yes, because if you're working with anybody aged under 16 and you're using them for data generation purposes, you have to get consent either from their parent or guardian for that. If you're doing any of that, just get in touch with me and I'll take you through that process. Very likely that nobody is, but if you are, let me know. Okay, number 6, are there any questions in your data gathering likely to be considered in any way offensive or inappropriate? Probably not, but if you're researching a particularly controversial or delicate subject, maybe some people might be offended or might find it a bit awkward, so think about that. If the answer is yes, just explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you think that what you're doing is ethically sound. Have all necessary steps been taken to protect the privacy of participants and their anonymity? That should be a yes. You're going to keep them anonymous in the write-up and you're going to protect the data. And in fact, that's question 7A. Is there provision for the safekeeping of written data and audio-video recordings? Yes, as I say, the gold standard, keep it all on a separate external hard drive or thumb drive, which is preferably encrypted and at the very least properly password protected. Number 8, is there provision for debriefing participants after the interventional project? In other words, when you end your ARP, are you going to be able to talk to your students and tell them, a little bit about what you've learned and how you found their data helpful? Entirely up to you. I would say that you either say yes there, because I think that would be good practice, or not applicable if by the time you finish the project you're not going to see those students again. Last 2 questions. Number 9, if you're going to use any specialised research instruments like psychometric tests, for example, will you get an appropriate qualified professional to do that? I think it's very unlikely that would be applicable, so it's probably a not applicable. And do you need to put your proposal through a separate ethic committee? No, you do not, so you can just ring no, okay? So you fill in all those questions, you pop your name on, you pop on the title of the project, you sign it, you send it to me, and then I will electronically sign it, so that's signature PG Cert Course Leader, I'll electronically sign it and send it back to you. So if you do it all electronically, this is the best way of doing it. If you haven't got an electronic signature, then don't worry, send it me without that. Just type your name in there, and then you can sign it by hand when you get it back. The any further comments section is for any of those questions where you did ring the answer, which was in bold and in capitals, and you just have to explain a little bit about, why that's your answer, why you know what you're doing is okay. Short explanations, 1 paragraph maximum for any of them. You don't need to go on at great length. It's absolutely fine. I'll send it back to you. Keep the form, and then you need to hand it in with your ARP when it comes in eventually. Let's aim to get these all done and dusted in the next couple of weeks, because then you've got them all, I've signed them all, and then we know that you're all ready to start your projects.